fail in this 2021 prelims exam. Yes, you might fail in 2021 prelims exam. Okay. Yes. Okay. You heard it right. Okay. GK. I think GK is something that people normally hear. What about OK? What about OK versus GK? General knowledge, probably the one single thing when you were small, maybe your parents must have told you, get general knowledge, amass general knowledge, and you have to, when you started preparing for the UPSC exam, people must have told you, you should have a lot of general knowledge. GK. What about OK? I think OK is what you call overall knowledge. Very different from general knowledge, maybe much more different from general knowledge. I think when you talk about the exams in India, it's high time GK should be replaced with what you call as OK, which means overall knowledge. That means the sum total of knowledge that you have gained from the moment you started to walk and until the moment you are writing the examination. That means the sum total of all the knowledge that you have. Maybe that is what I call it as a OK, overall knowledge. Sometimes in the civil service preliminary examination questions, some students actually tell me, after the exam they come and tell me, I saw the question paper, I prepared for 3 to 4 years, this is my 4th or 5th attempt. The moment I got the question paper in the exam hall, I read the whole paper and the only feeling that I got is, why did I study? What was the point of my study? If this was the paper, I could have easily solved it in a one go. What was the point of keeping so many things, especially the marks more, even ROIM into that? You see the question paper and you feel that, what was the point of study? All the questions were very pretty general. This looks in the first instance. The questions looks very general. But when you go into the depth of the question, you see that without proper study, you could not have solved the question. So in the first instance, you feel that why did you study? And most often what you see that such questions appear in the question paper, which needs a lot of overall knowledge. That means which is way beyond the level of GK. And let's check out the question that appeared. This is a question which I really liked, which UPSC asked, a question about elephants. They've asked a question about elephants. They talk about the gestation period, the calving, and the female element of the elephants, and then you have a important thing about the largest number of elephants found in which state. Pretty much question, where did you study all this? Which NCERT talks about all this? I don't know if I am wrong, but normally many of the people got it wrong. Many of the people who wrote again, congratulations to all the people who got it right, but many of the aspirants who saw these questions were confused to some extent. And I'm talking about the general people who have problems inside them. How do you solve such questions actually? So that is what I'm trying to tell you. While you prepare for your exam, while you read newspapers, anything, try to get that overall knowledge. I think UPSC once before also asked a question on trans fat, something that appears in every biscuits and every chips packets. You see on the backwards thing that it contains no trans fat. And UPSC also asked a question once that which of the following things use GPS, banking, power grids, etc. So these days you see a lot of relatable real life questions being asked in the examination, which we normally see around. So this is also a test of increasing your OK. So please try to increase that OK level and see around the things, and whenever you see a new concepts coming in, try to know the whole thing. And please remember, OK always means the sum total of all the knowledge that you've gained from your real life experience, from your college life, from your work, everywhere. That really helps in solving many of the questions in the civil service prelims examination. So keep in mind, and as usual, if your OK is right, find the clue in every question. I'll give you one more illustration before I tell you the other thing. Imagine there is a question on budget. I'll tell you what civil service preparation should really look like. You got a question on budget, and imagine the question is actually about a new scheme of project called X. Let it be X. As usual, from the time inception, it has always been X. Let it be X. And you see two options. And the first option talks about the type of the program which X is about. And the second option talks about the budget overlay. This much of expense is being given to this. The moment an aspirant, a common aspirant, sees this question paper, you know what goes into his mind or her mind? The moment he or she sees a question paper, oh my god, again, this is an area which I have absolutely zero clue. The first thing that they do is they skip the question or they don't even attempt it. Only because book note effect works here. This is not an area which they have found out. In my suggestion, even if X doesn't give you any clue, check into the clue of the question. The first statement, X is actually a scheme, something like this, no clue. When you see a second option that this is the budget, that means Y% or Y% of the budget is allocated to X. What are you going to do? Because according to my civil service preparation on current affairs, I have read the budget. And when I read the budget, I found out the allocation of funds to many of the schemes. And I know that the scheme which I talked, X, is actually a small scheme of a major scheme. And even the major scheme was allotted this much money. I don't know the money, but I know the amount range or the fund range of what was the amount. Forgot the amount. I know the range of the amount of the major scheme. That scheme's amount is this much. And the question that is being asked here, the second option, this much amount is allocated for X. That amount might be 3 times larger the amount for the main scheme. And my civil service preparation for current affairs tells me that this statement is absolutely wrong, because I don't know about the statement, I don't know about the money, I don't know about the fund allocation, but I don't know one thing, that X is a part of a major scheme. Even the major scheme's budget allocation is 3 times lesser than this. Then how will the statement be correct? That is what, knowing this thing that the scheme's fund allocation is absolutely wrong, is what is called as your civil service preparation. Your civil service preparation of understanding, concept clarity, let it be anything, should give you this insight while you solve a question. This is the real civil service preparation. This is your level of understanding. So don't skip any question without reading. There might be a clue in all the questions. So, okay, get everything okay. Overall knowledge is something that is going to help you. Now let's talk about the out-of-the-box questions. Is there something called an out-of-the-box question? So simply when we talk about out-of-the-box question, we simply want to say that some questions which you don't have absolute clue about where it was asked. And the one thing that normal people after the exam, they come and say, current affairs was so difficult, you don't know where the from on which earth actually they actually asked this question. I read the newspapers, I read everything, but I was not able to pinpoint this. So every year there are a category of such questions which we normally call as the out of the box questions, and that definitely affects a lot of aspirants' mindset when they write the examination. Let's decode why that happens. And before we define what you mean by an out of the box question, I would like to give you a small illustration like every time. Just imagine a tea or coffee. Take tea, because tea is something that people normally like. And we have different kinds of tea, like we have lemon tea, lime tea, ginger tea, any stuff that you like. And what does that happen? You actually have a tea, and if you add some lime, it becomes lime tea, and add some ginger, it becomes ginger tea. So basically my point is, out of the box questions are like flavors. They are like flavors being added into the tea. They might be just like, you must have read your mixtures and allegation, it's only a few percentage of thing being mixed in the whole tea. Basically that is a tea which you can drink, which gives you a flavor of that. This normally happens with the UPSC question paper also. I've heard my students telling me, normally I take a survey, I ask everybody how the things went. Normally the one thing that they say is, the question paper was very difficult. And now I'll tell you what is the difference between a serious and a non-serious candidate. With no offense to non-serious candidates, you have ample time to become a serious candidate also. But normally on the base of the preparation, I'll tell you the difference between non-serious and serious candidates. Serious candidates are people who make an attempt to solve the out-of-the-box questions. If they have absolutely no idea, they leave it and they move on to the other questions and make them right. And the non-serious aspirants, especially who do not have that kind of an idea, normally says that it's a very difficult paper, you have a lot of questions which we not have heard about. But you know one thing, and what is that UPSC magic? The people who set the question paper, do you know what they do in the question paper? If you have a series of out-of-the-box questions, say imagine 15 to 16 questions out of the total 100 questions are out-of-the-box questions, what they normally do is they mix the questions so nicely throughout the paper. It's like spreading. It's like spreading butter on the bread. You actually spread it nicely in a mixed pattern. So some people, when they open the question paper, this is the normal emotion that goes through a person. First 10 questions, first 2 sides, no idea. Second sides, all the questions, I don't know. And you suddenly get a feeling that it's completely gone. I'll have to write another exam. This happens with everybody. So here comes again the point of serious aspirants versus non-serious aspirants. And I would also like to make a small point at this point. When you open the question paper and see the questions, both for serious candidates as well as non-serious candidates, I think I'll make a small change. There is definitely a category of people who are called as non-serious aspirants and serious candidates, and I think there is a new category of students who are called as the struggling aspirants. To be fair to everybody, I think I'll call some section of the people as struggling aspirants who are going to be serious. So what is the basic difference between this when they see the question paper? And the single point that I wanted to tell you is that, in my opinion, in my experience in the last so many years, I've seen a lot of question papers. One thing that I found is, I don't think UPSC will ask a lot of questions which we call as out-of-the-box questions. Like, don't imagine a situation where you get 60 questions out of the 70 as out-of-the-box questions. That never happens. That is why, over the past experiences of the question papers, we are trying to tell you that whatever the questions that is being asked, out-of-the-box questions will just be a flavor. That will only be mixed in such a scenario that terrifies some of the aspirants, and the moment you get terrified, you start losing the paper. That is what normally happens with all the aspirants, and that is where serious, focused aspirants, you know what they do? They just see the questions, they do one thing. Am I getting any clue out of this? There are no clues. So what you do is, you just leave the clue. And here is the point that I want to make a strong thing. Even there are out-of-the-box questions, you will always have a safe passage of questions. Just imagine there are 18 to 19 out-of-the-box, so-called out-of-the-box questions which you don't have any clue. But don't worry, there are always a safe passage in every UPSC prelims paper. That means 60 to 70 questions, or roughly speaking, about 100 marks, 50% of the marks, there will be questions which are called safe passages. That means there will be questions where you can answer them, which will give you a good score between 80 to 90 or 100, which can land you in a safe zone. So this happens with every year's paper. So don't get terrified by the so-called out-of-the-box question. They may mix it to any proportion you want. What happens if you don't get an answer in first page? What happens if you don't get a good answer in second page? Don't lose that heart. That is something. People easily accept defeat. They simply, what is the psychology that goes into the mind? I think I'm losing my paper, I'll have to write it again. The moment that fear grips in your mind, your logic closes. Your mind, your focus, your concentration, everything gets closed. You stop thinking. That is when you get defeated. UPSC didn't defeat you, you defeated yourself. That is the feeling. So My purpose of telling you this out of the box question was to only tell you that that is only going to be a flavor. If you know, if you can find a clue, just answer it, or else leave it. Look for the safe passage of questions where you can maximize your points. That is the ultimate thing of solving such questions. And let's see, let's take a close look at some of the questions. You can just take a close look at this question. I think there are some out of the box questions, and one disclaimer that I want to put here is some people know all the questions, and some of the aspirants may not feel such questions as out of the box questions. They feel that I have read about this, that is fair and good. I am talking about the struggling category of people, or the non-serious aspirants who want to get serious aspirants. For them, normally after the exam we do a normal survey with people, students, and some of the people who study this, the Vital Vidwansak was actually something Gopal Baba. I think many of the people did not know about this and found it difficult. So such questions can come. If you have an idea, you can definitely go about this. And also there was a question about the Ghantashala, the Kadura, Chawl during the Gupta period. Such questions, they also create, especially questions of ancient India, medieval India, give you this chill. You don't have an idea. If you don't have an idea, absolutely you don't find any clue, you can easily skip it. No issues on that. And some of the queries, some of the response that I've got is a question about pro-nuclear transfer. If you come from a background where you can associate this perfectly, if you come from a non-science background, you come from an economics, you come from a history or a sociology background, and you have no clue about all this, this might look like pro-nuclear transfer. If you have found the answer, that is good. But the point is, there will be questions which you haven't read, or which you couldn't locate in the newspapers or your study materials. So out of the box questions, now you know how to tackle them. They are just ultimately at the end, just flavors. So don't get terrified, solve them. It is something that we can handle it. Now I think we have discussed so much about the content side, especially the theories which we propounded, and I think definitely they are going to make a huge impact in your preparation. Just like in the beginning of the session, we discussed about the heart and soul of the question, or heart and soul of the issue. The heart was basically about the content. Now I'll tell you something about the soul, which means practice. Practice is something which an aspirant definitely wants if he or she wants to clear the UPSC Prelims examination. Or else, what is the biggest drawback? If you start learning everything, that means you have mastered the complete heart or the content. You know everything about, you have an absolute understanding, concept clarity, everything. But what if you don't have that required amount of practice? It will be like learning bicycle. That means your coach or your mentor must have taught you how to ride a bicycle, and the coach must have told you how to ride the bicycle when you have a rough patch, when you have not a clear track, you have a rough roads, you have a road full of stones. He must have taught you how to do this, and you have learned to ride a bicycle. That's a good thing. And what happens on one fine morning? The coach takes you to a track with full of pebbles and full of boulders and stones and rocks. Suddenly you started to crumble. You will feel a small tremble or a crumble while you started to ride on the bicycle track. Why is that happening? It is because every moment or every second when you start riding on the rough track, you will feel the theories bombarding in your mind. The theories will come into your mind, especially your coach and mentors telling you that when you hit a stone, you should do this. When you go to a depression, you should rotate the bicycle. But you're not able to do that. This is one feeling that which every aspirant relate to themselves. This happens many times when you know too much of a theory and you don't have that requisite or required practice in the field. This was about bicycle. This very much applies to your civil service practice also. So when you start preparing, you should start practicing also. So before we practice, let me give you a fair idea about the question pattern actually. Even question pattern, along with the question pattern, I would also like to give you an idea about the trend of the questions. Let's decode the question trends. Before 2010 was a big year for Civil Service Prelims Exam. The change came. 2000 until 2010, you know that there were 150 questions in the prelims, and after 2010, from 2011, the changing pattern of UPSC was something that we all noticed. Every aspirant could note a small change in the questions and the way they were asked. From 2011 to 2020, you see that the nature of the questions, the level of the logic, the level of the analytical skills saw a massive and a drastic change. And before 2010, if you have checked the question paper, you must have seen that there are a lot of questions which are direct shot. I call them as point blank question, which that means point blank is something that you shoot. I call that a point blank questions. Imagine, Bengal Gazette was started by who? You get 4 options. James Augustus Hickey. If you don't know the answer, you don't know that. There is no logic involved. Only you know the question or you don't know the question. And from 2011, you must have seen one important thing, that apart from the trend, the nature of the questions also changed drastically. You started to have single statement questions like this, 2 statement questions where you're given 2 statements, questions where you're given 3 statements, question where you're given 4 statements, and sometimes even a long exhaustive list like the name of the minerals, name of the chemical, sometimes even 7 to 8 options are also given. And to eliminate, from the perspective of elimination, this is the most easiest because you get a lot of opportunity to eliminate it. How can you solve them? But most of the aspirants find it as a difficult thing. When they see the question is actually this big. There are 4 options. From the point of elimination, this looks very good. But when you see it for the first time, it looks a bit tough. That means you have to practice in all formats. That means UPSC can, I think the formats are like route maps. Imagine, again, illustration given to you. Imagine a road. There is one road which is very clear. Imagine that as a direct shot questions where there is a single question. There is another road where you have lots of pebbles. That are the 2 questions. That means they ask a question and after that they ask 1, 2 options. They are the second roads. Imagine the third road with 3 statements. They are the roads with multiple depression. That means you have to go down, face a small tremor, then come up. So there are a lot of roads. So please try to equate all the types of questions as the roads. How are you going to solve it? That means you should practice. You know what is the biggest advantage of practice? Practice is something which we call, you will get a response time, you will get a time balance, because when you see a question, you need to get the time limit, you need to get the answers in a required time. So that means there should be a good response rate happening in your brain should process the answer and it should quickly give you the answer. It should happen in a quick frame. That means time, the response ratio, everything matters. And especially imagine, what if you get out of the box questions and if your book note theory doesn't work? So that means there is an element of stress also. So if the stress builds up, in that stress, your mind should focus accurately, find and process an answer. Don't you think it's easy? Do you really think it's possible? It is only possible with practice. So that is why imagine all the question formats, single question, double questions, triple questions as different type of roads and different type of routes. UPSC, you know what they do? If you've seen the Formula 1 car racing, it's very good. Not every circuit is similar. Some circuits are very different. So the route map of the race is determined by the company or the organization. And at this UPSC examination, the route map of the question is determined by UPSC. It might have stones, it might have depressions. My humble suggestion is that when you practice the single statement questions, practice the double statements, practice the 3 statement questions, practice the 4 statement questions. That means, in short, be well versed in all the formats of the question. That means when UPSC gives you a route map, you should be able to solve it under any amount of stress. That means any number of questions or any amount of stress that builds in your mind, you should be able to solve it. That means be prepared for all the formats of the examination. And in order to do that, you need to have this great thing called as practice level. That means practice in all formats so that all the stress factors can be overcome. And one more thing, when you prepare it, especially in the prelims examination, make sure you practice every day. Because just like we say for answer writing, writing is an art. Solving such questions, especially the double statement, triple statements, it doesn't come overnight. So please remember the story of the cycle that I told you in the beginning. Without proper practice, nothing is going to work out. Even you know all the theories, even you have all the understanding, nothing can compromise, nothing can substitute the great thing called practice. You have to practice every day. That is mandatory. So you've got the advantages of practice, and I've told you how it can help you to tackle pressure, stress, time, and having a great response ratio, because the answer should quickly come from this angle to your pen. That is the response rate which we talk about. It should be quick under any stress factor. So it will not come easily. You have to work for it. So please remember that. And one more thing, before we tell about practice, and one more thing that I would like to ask or give you a call to action to all the people who have failed at least one prelims, or if you belong to that category of people which we call as a struggling category of aspirants, if you have this problem, I want you to try this, because it's also important to have the right insights about your failure. You should know what is wrong with you. If you have failed in the 2020 prelims, or if you have failed in 2019, 18 or any prelims, I want you to take down that paper, especially if it is happening in 2019, 18, 20, in this ranges. One thing that you should remember is, take out the paper, write, make a small graph, take down each question, write the question. If you don't have time, just mark the lead of the question and just see what is the question, and please indicate a small thing. Did I solve this question? If yes, perfectly all right. If you have not solved that question, please write down why you could not solve that question. That means I want you to write your feeling or your emotion that went through while solving that question. Just write, I could not solve the question. If there is a question on the elephants that we discussed, or about the G20, please write down why you could not solve. The answer can be something like this: I could not solve it because I knew about G20, but I never knew Argentina, Mexico or Turkey was part of that, because I did not know about that. Or then you will write about another question: I knew the question, but the options were very difficult for me. I have absolutely no clue about the option, but the question looked very familiar. Please mark this emotion. And after the 100th question, at least once, this is what I called as a refinement map. Please create a refinement map and just see at the end of the preparation, take the 100 questions, just see the refinement output by yourself. Where are we standing? Why did you fail? That is an answer that you should have. If you have ever failed in any exam, especially in Civil Service Preliminary Examination, you should find the answer to this, that why you failed in this exam. This refinement map, try this. This is worth a time, worth an investment of your time. You should get your refinement. All it takes is just 2 hours, or just mostly, I think by 1 hour you can easily complete it. Complete this, take an analysis, make and find out why you failed. That will give you a real good insight, and that will definitely help you to correct the hard side of the problem, which is the content side, and the soul side, which is the practice side. This will definitely give you a lot of insights and will be definitely helpful for the coming prelims also. Now we have discussed about the heart as well as the soul. Then why don't create a Homo sapien or a human body? Why not create a body? You have the heart and the soul. Let's create that body, and that body is called as revision, the most cardinal important thing for your civil service preparation, without which nothing is going to work out. Take it from me, I really truly mean it. Nothing is going to work out without revision. I don't want to give you a big lecture on this. Maybe I want to make you think or remind you something. I'll again do it as an illustration. You know the biggest flaw of humans, not aspirants, but when it comes to civil service preparation or any examination, the biggest flaw of every human is, you think your brain or your capacity or your mind as a supercomputer. this happens. Trust me, this happens every time. You trust yourself as a supercomputer. I'll illustrate this. You're preparing a huge examination which has got a lot of syllabus, lot of tons of things to read, books, NCRTs and whatnot. You know what normally happens? The moment you think that, yeah, my brain is going to be a supercomputer, and you overthink that you're a supercomputer. I am studying geography and reading about the forest of India, tropical evergreen, tropical deciduous forests, mountain, whatnot, different kinds of forests. You just read, you make notes, you study all this. This is as if you're copying some file in a folder in the computer. That means if your mind is a computer, you read this thing and you have written the notes, and as if you've read the statement, you've recorded that thing in the folder, and that goes into the back end of your mind. It is saved. You read Indian polity, you read about the parliament, the different type of bills that can be introduced in the parliament. Yes, why not? Everything recorded straight into the mind, put it in the folder, dropped into the mind. You keep that process going. You almost put everything like this in your folder, and after some time, just like when you put a lot of things in your computer, you know what is the biggest thing that you do? You just go right click that thing and just find out what is the storage space. Oh, almost the drive is full. Everybody has a feeling. Again, psychological satisfaction. It comes into your mind and you feel that my hard disk is almost complete. I am ready for the preparation. And the next thing, just waiting for the examination. Give me the paper. You just get the papers. You know what you do? You just take it, and the moment you see a question, the question on polar bear, you do this thing. You just close your mind, type everything in your mind, and get the results for polar bear. Nothing comes. Did anything come? This is nothing to be ashamed of. And 99.9% of people will relate to this. I don't know, because there is always some people who are exceptions, who might be super machines or supercomputers. But I'm talking about struggling aspirants, non-serious aspirants who want to become serious aspirants. This works with everybody. Your mind is not a super machine or a supercomputer. This way of typing and finding the search result in your brain doesn't work. That means you have to read, reread, work, remember, recollect. This is a huge process, and this is a huge thing that you have to do. Only then the things that you remember will be solid. So please, this was a small reminder that I wanted to give you, because I see normally many of the aspirants, the biggest thing that they say is, I don't have time. But this is my serious question. If you don't have time, then are you expecting a miracle to happen? The chances of you failing in the exam is going to be very high. So keep in this mind, your brain is no super machine. It needs a lot of exercise, it needs a lot of recollection, it needs a lot of reminding. Then it will work perfectly in the examination. So I hope that all of you will revise and get the best out of that. We started off with a great intro. Will you fail in this year's prelims examination? I said the chances of you failing is very high. And now you know what are the so-called reasons, especially the heart, soul, the body. Everything is so confident in you. Please work this out, and please keep in your mind, this truly works. If you try this, you can see the change. Definitely the chances of you qualifying this exam is going to be so high. So work like a bureaucrat, think like a bureaucrat. If you want to be a bureaucrat, put that kind of an effort. Be a person of quality. Thank you so much. This is Arjun R. Shaankar, and you're listening to LearnStroke.